What's up, everybody? My name's Azariah, and I'm here to talk about a little bit of my life and some of the mental health issues that I've went through. 33 years old now. Currently live here in Oxnard, California, but I didn't always start here. I was actually born in Salt Lake City, Utah, in 1991, and my life wasn't normal like others. I was born in a college university. My mother actually conceived me in a federal prison. Like I said, it's not normal. My mother's story is a whole another thing. Maybe I'll make a video on that someday, but kind of just wanted to explain who I am and give people a different perspective of me personally. And immediately after being born, I was taken in by a family known as the Quintanas. That's where I had got my last name from. I was with them since birth, basically, due to the fact that my birth mother grew up with this family. The kids, they grew up as friends, and the woman that is known to be my adoptive mother, her name is Barbara. I actually have her and her husband tatted on my arms in memory for them. Henry is deceased. Barbara's still around. But again, this is about me, not them. I wasn't officially adopted by them. I was basically given a caregiver, but it was nothing of it was official. I was simply just being watched by this family while my mother was in prison with no formal form of adoption. I grew up with this family, got to know them as my family because I didn't know anyone else. And little did I know behind the scenes there was other things going on. And of course, I was only between 1 and 4 years old when all this stuff happened. Long story short, I was being kept from my mother. I was taken to visit her from time to time in prison, but eventually those visits stopped, and my mother grew tired and weary of that. Fast forward to when I was 4 years old, Henry, rest his soul, unfortunately passed away due to a heart attack. And at the funeral, my mother had actually requested child services to pick me up, albeit the funeral was already something very difficult to kind of process as a kid because what I had known growing up, that was my dad. That's all I knew. And from the memories that I can kind of, think back and remember, he was a very good guy. And he was one of the few people that I felt really cared about me as a person, even so young, without being his blood child. So at the funeral of Henry, child services were sent. And literally after he was buried, I was taken by child services and placed in somewhat of an orphanage and got cycled through, I want to say, from what I remember, two or three families. When I think back about it, it was insane. For example, one of the houses I went to, there was at least like 7 or 8 kids, big family. And all of the kids would sit around and gather and play the Super Nintendo on the TV or play on the computer because they actually had a computer and I had never seen one ever at that age. Um, I wasn't allowed to play the video games. I wasn't allowed to use the computer. They had a trampoline. I wasn't allowed to jump on the trampoline. I can remember we would all sit down and eat lunch together, right? And the kids would get ham and cheese sandwiches with chips, whatever they wanted, juice, Capri Suns, you name it. And I was just given peanut butter and bread. and Lay's potato chips every time with a glass of water. I couldn't have juice, soda, anything of the sort. So it caused me to act out. I remember sneaking into one of the rooms, and there was a cat who had a litter of kittens, and I was so excited to see kittens. I had never seen baby kittens before in my life. So I ended up taking one of the kittens and playing with them. And I'm a little kid, I'm just tossing the cat around. I'm doing all this crazy shit, and the kitten actually ends up dying, unfortunately. And I was sent back to the orphanage. I think I went to like one other family. I don't even remember how long I was there, but all I remember about that house is sitting in the backyard. They had a swing set, and just sitting there on the swing set by myself. And I can't remember if it was one of the social workers or who it was, but they brought me this big teddy bear and said it was from my family that I knew of, Barbara, Henry, and them. But I didn't even react. I didn't care. I was just kind of sitting there. And then next thing you know, I'm back in the foster care orphanage place. And at this time, they were going through legalities trying to officially adopt me and um, combat my mother in court, my birth mother, Venus, for my custody. I remember sitting in this room, kind of similar to this, but same color, smaller, and there was a window behind me. I wasn't allowed to look at the window. I couldn't look out the window at them. Them being Barbara and her family. I wasn't allowed to look outside, but they each were able to come in one by one and speak to me in this room for about 5 minutes apiece. And it was weird. To be honest, I can't even explain how I felt. I just remember being very stoic. I remember being lost, confused, and asking them why can't I just go home with you now? They couldn't really explain it to me. I was only 4 years old. Like how's a kid gonna know? Like, oh, we have to go through such and such procedures to adopt you, and blah 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 blah. That wouldn't have made a lick of sense to me as a kid. And next thing you know, I'm in court, and of course they get custody over me because my mother was a felon. She was in prison at the time, and I was granted custody to Barbara and her family. Now that I think back on those times, it makes me realize that I have issues with not only family but love in general. Because as a child, I didn't understand, like, why would they do that to me? Why would they just let them take me from the funeral? And I'll be damned, like they did not let me go willingly, but I just think back to being placed in the car and looking at them and being taken away. And just thinking, why are they doing this to me? Why? And also reflecting back on it, why would my mother, my birth mother, want to put me through that? Why would anyone want a child to go through the system and feel alone? That's where my issues and fear of being alone grew, and it low-key just worsened over the years. So we stayed around in Salt Lake for a little while. I would be with Barbara, and also at the time we lived in the same apartment complex as my adoptive brother his then at the time girlfriend, baby mom, and their child, Tony, Chrisney, and Emilio. It was fun. I would always constantly go over to their apartment because we were literally right across from each other. It was them on the second floor on the building in front of us, and us on the bottom floor directly across, with a pool in the middle. So we would constantly go swimming. We would I would always be at Tony's house with Emilio, playing video games, fighting like kids do. And I thought life was going to be great at that point, even with losing a father figure. Still had another in Tony and somewhat of a brother with Emilio. All that was changed very drastically, very quick. Next thing you know, we're packing our stuff and we're heading out of state, heading to Colorado. And at the time, I didn't know why we were doing that because I thought things were good. But according to Barbara, my adoptive mother, she didn't want my mother's family to have anything to do with me. She wanted to be as far from them as possible. Albeit my mother was still in prison, she was due to get out anytime, sometime soon, years down in the future. I later learned down the road, a little closer to this age now, probably in my late 20s, that there was an argument between Barbara and Tony. Apparently, Tony and Christy wanted to adopt me fully and have me grow up with Emilio, which I think would have been much better. I would have turned out probably a way better person in the end, with just set up for success in some way or fashion. Albeit they didn't stick together, but that's a different story. So fast forward again, we're off to Colorado, and this is where more of my mental health deterioration happened. We moved to a place called Sawatch, Colorado. And apparently there's my uncle and my aunts and one of my grandmas. This is all by adoption, not by blood. And a cousin that a little younger than me. He was like, I want to say I was 4, he was 2, 3-ish. And here I was again, filling that empty void of Tony, Christine, and Emilio. Now I have my Uncle Randy, Cindy, and this child Christian. Again, playing every day, riding bikes. Had this father figure in Randy, somewhat mother figure in Cindy. Staying with them. Again, that was very short lived. And we end up moving down the street to another town about 10-15 minutes away called Center, Colorado. And this is where I was introduced to one of my mother's ex-boyfriends, I guess, from back in the day. And we ended up moving in with him at his house. But this is where the loneliness factor kicked in again. We lived with this gentleman named Ben for a set amount of time. This is where I was starting to be ignored. Barbara was going through her own issues of losing her husband and trying to raise a child on her own. And I was not an easy child to raise. I was pretty hectic. I have anger issues, so on and so forth. And it was very difficult for her to manage that. But again, this is where the loneliness factor kicked in. So she would want to spend all her time with Ben. And I was somewhat left to kind of figure things out on my own, albeit she still cooked. She still did my laundry. She bought me clothes, so on and so forth. But she just wanted to be with Ben. I've never told anyone this. I've never mentioned it to anybody, but this is where I was exposed to sexual activity, not to myself, but witnessing sexual acts at damn near 4.5, 5. One day I'm getting out of school, get off the bus, go inside. I'm happy, I want to see my mom. I just want to tell her, I love her, talk about my school day, had fun. And I'm walking through the house. I don't see anybody anywhere. I do hear noises, like whispering, breathing type noises. So the way that there's like a patio entrance that I go through, which is really the back door of the house, because the front door is by where I ended up at. So if you can kind of picture this, there's a patio entrance, kitchen immediately, one room right here by the kitchen, a bedroom. Once you get through the kitchen, there's this hallway with a restroom on the end, kind of like an office space, a living room, and then the master bedroom, right? So it kind of just goes like this. I'm walking through the house, and then I hear the noises, and I get to the master bedroom, and it's a very old style door with the big old keyhole locks on it, like that. And I hear noises, so I peek and look through the hole, and I see them having sex on the bed. And at first, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm 4. I'm just like, what the fuck are they doing in there? So whatever. I brush it off. I go in the kitchen. I start fixing myself a snack like nothing. And a few minutes later, they come out of the room, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing home already? Blah 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 blah." Oh, I was just laying down while she's fixing her hair, all stupid. Like, of course, at the time I was oblivious. I had no idea. I'm just like, "Okay, mom, whatever." Drinking my juice. That really messed me up, even though I didn't know it did. The loneliness only got worse. We ended up moving out of the house, got our own apartment, which was in the same town, just on the other side of town. And this is where things got crazy, somewhat. I was only 4 or 5 years old, like kindergarten, first grade area. Barbara would leave me by myself in an apartment to go hang out with Ben. No babysitter, no nothing, nobody. Just me in an apartment by myself. And what did all old school parents say back then? Don't answer the door for anybody. You run and hide behind the couch or in your room. Okay, mom. So at this point, I had to learn to cook. I had to learn to feed myself. Bathe myself, obviously. Every kid should know how to bathe themselves at that age, but pick my own clothes, get my stuff ready for the next day, do my homework by myself for hours. I get off of school, she'd be home. Okay, I'm going to Ben's. I'll see you in a little bit. And she would go until like 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock, and I would just be up, either awake, waiting for her, or I would go to sleep on the bed in her room because I was waiting for her. And that was a continuous thing for a few years. I want to say all the way till 3rd grade. Yeah. I know there were some times where she would want to stay the night over there at Ben's house. So she would make up this thing like, "Oh, let's go sleep in the car. We're gonna camp out in the car tonight." Of course, as a young kid, you're gonna think, "Oh, this is fun." Blah 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 blah. So we'd go. We had a Chevy Blazer at the time, and she'd fix a little bed in the back, and I would fall asleep, and she would drive to Ben's and then spend the night in there with him, and I would be in the car. And she would drive back in the morning and act like we slept in there. This is where a lot of my trust issues come from. I my hatred towards women grew deeply inside of me, deep, and it didn't reflect until I got around this age. I just had no respect for women at all. I could not stand women. And I still don't to this day trust most women. Um, Sad as it is to say, I just, I have a hard time connecting with other males because I just don't really care to connect with people. I don't trust anything a woman says ever because to me, it's still all lies. Like they just want to lie to me, which I know isn't the case 100% of the time. But I do harbor that hatred deeply still. My school progress started declining. I've always been a very good reader, but my attention span, my anger, my patience, my rationality all depleted. And I was constantly in and out of trouble, getting suspended, in-house suspension, referrals, going to the principal's office. I even had to take anger management classes in the second grade. What kind of kid has to take anger management at that age? Next thing you know, my sister, by adoption, is diagnosed with breast cancer. And here we go, moving to California. And in between that time, there were times where we did move back to Salt Lake City, and then back to Colorado, and then back to Salt Lake City, and back to Colorado. It was a mess, but I didn't really want to dive into all that because more or less everything happens when I got here to California. But that did play a factor into me also having a hard time connecting with people. I never got settled anywhere. I was constantly having to make new friends in different places at new schools every 4 to 6 months. I can't even tell you how many elementary schools I went to. So jump back to California. Sister's diagnosed with breast cancer. And here I am again at another school with new people in a new state. I wouldn't say I was bullied because I always fought back. Even if I knew I couldn't fight or beat the person up, I was always willing to fight back. I was scared to fight, but I was always willing to fight, and I stood up for myself constantly. The good part about moving out here to California was obviously moving with my sister. She had her son, which is someone I still confide into and talk to this day. And he's more like a brother, even though he's my nephew, technically. But we're 7 years apart. He's 7 years older than me, but we're very similar and have same experiences almost. Things are going good. Awesome. I have brother figure in Alfred. I'm finally making friends at schools. And I'm kind of getting that family feeling back. This is where Barbara meets her newest boyfriend of the picking. from the beginning, I had never really liked the guy, and this is where the choosing another man over me repeated. She met this man from working at a local Walmart. They both happened to work at together. Started dating, and next thing you know, she's moving in with him. I stayed with my sister for a little bit, but eventually, like I was like hot potato. When someone got tired of me, they passed me off to the next person. And when that person got tired of me, I was then passed off back to my mom or to my sister, wherever. So stayed with my sister for a while. She got tired of me, passed me back to my mom. This some of the worst memories I've ever had because only only one of the real times did I have my own room. The rest of the times it was three people in one room. So picture me and 11, 12 years old living in a room with two grown ass adults. Not only that, they both were heavy smokers. And they smoked in the room. They smoked in the car when we would go places. And I would try to roll down the window so I can breathe. They'd roll it back up because it's fucking up their smoking. It was terrible. Being stuck in a room smelling cigarette smoke every time. From when you wake up, when you go to bed. The ways I escaped this was going out with my friends, going to the park, hanging out, playing. Or if I couldn't go out, no one could hang out, I would just go on my computer. I had a computer at the time. And I got really into, at the time, MySpace was big, and just design profiles. Mine, other people's, just trying to talk to people, make friends, just to kind of forget about where I was. We kind of bounced around. We didn't have a house. Like I probably didn't explain that properly, but if we were renting rooms, we didn't have a house that we rented. They didn't make enough money to get a house. We literally rented rooms from random people. You know, if we were lucky, we got the master bedroom. But we bounced from house to house to house, just renting rooms. And they refused to try and get an apartment with more room because they wanted to save money, which in the end, they're not saving money by renting a room. And I lived in Las Vegas for a little bit with my brother from the adoption, and he was a drug addict. I lived with him for a period of time and went to an elementary school and a junior high, two different time periods. But I didn't realize he was a drug addict until the second time I lived with him. The one thing I remember and what tipped me off the most was we were living in his studio apartment in Old Vegas, and I was asleep and woke up, but I heard voices when I woke up. Obviously, it's a studio; it's like as big as this room, and I pretended I was still asleep. Right? I just hear two gentlemen speaking Spanish. I don't know what they were saying, but my brother was giving them prices for things in the room. I just laid there and pretended I was asleep listening. And he was obviously not speaking correct Spanish, but he was selling my video games because I had a PS2 at the time, trying to sell my PS2, rollers, DVDs, everything. So I laid there pretending to go to sleep, be asleep, and he left with them. Don't know where, don't know what they did, what happened, but I got up and I went to school. Um, there wasn't like a school bus or anything like that. It was downtown old Las Vegas, so I had to get up 6 in the morning by myself, walk all the way to the cat bus stop. And I'm sure you can imagine what that looks like at 6 in the morning, getting to the bus station and getting on the bus with prostitutes, drug dealers, crackheads, hobos. They're going to work, I'm going to school. You know what I'm saying? And to make matters worse, I get to school, right? I'm like in third period. And I get a call from my brother, and he's cussing me out. You left the door open. They broke in. They took everything. Blah, 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 blah. You didn't lock the door. And just blaming everything on me. But he doesn't know to this day that I heard you selling my shit. I heard everything. And you blame me for it. This is where I started to harbor hate towards my own family. And the trust issues just got worse. Started cutting people off. I was in my angry at the world phase. Didn't want anything to do with anybody. Just wanted to get out of there. I'm back in California again. And the cycle repeats itself. Not only was I going through it, but the whole family was. There were times we would all get together, but it wouldn't be a good thing. There was times where I witnessed my own family members fighting, threatening to kill each other, listening to a family member call up one of his homies and say, hey, I need the heater now. I'm going to off me a F word because that family member was gay. So I'm witnessing dysfunction like that, hearing those words of family threatening to kill each other just hardened my heart even more. And up until around the time I got into high school, all I did was avoid my family. This is the period where I was just constantly in the streets. I wasn't like a gang member or anything of the sort. I wasn't doing drugs. Just constantly in the street, roaming the streets with my friends. We would literally roam the whole city here in Oxnard, going from down, if you're familiar with Oxnard, to Ocean View Junior High, walking all the way down to Rio Mesa High School, riding bikes up and down to Ventura, walking from golf and stuff all the way to Southside Oxnard. I did anything I could to not be home. I would constantly find refuge at other people's houses. And All I had to do was be like, hey, I'm not coming home tonight. I'm spending the night over here. Okay, call me if you need anything. Like, no one gave a fuck what I was doing, where I was at by 8. Oh, you're alive? Cool. Good. Carry on. And that went on and on until I became 18. And then I demanded for Barbara to give me my social security checks. And I left and into the room, just like them, obviously. But at a home I was always at, one of my friend's house. And his parents had a room for rent, and they let me rent it for $300 a month. I stayed there until I graduated high school, and then I went and shipped out to the army. Again, running from everything. Did not want to be around. Just didn't want to be here. And my career in the army was short-lived because I was mentally unstable. I was probably at the lowest low I'd ever been because this is where the loneliness factor really messed me up. I had gotten so used to running away from my problems and just being around other people at other people's houses that when I left to basic training and got stationed at where I was at, I had never felt more alone. And I was just searching for someone or something to fill that void. And this is around the time where I started dating the mother of my children, of which she gave me 3 beautiful children. Now, but and then no. So I was alone, and all I wanted was someone there. I was trying to get married, trying to move her out there, because if you're married in the military, you get cheap ass housing, and like you can have a house, and it was like, let's start our lives. I need this, but there was no way that was happening. I couldn't take the pressure of the military. I was constantly acting out, being insubordinate, not listening to authority, getting in trouble. And then I ended up getting mixed up with somewhat of the wrong crowd. A bunch of servicemen that themselves were in trouble for drugs, various things, various sorts of things. And after thinking I couldn't be touched, I ended up getting in trouble in Article 45 for smoking spice. Unfortunately, that was my early termination from the military. Well, I should say it all boiled down to a week before deployment, and got busted. We were on base smoking spice. One of my buddy's roommates walks in, leaves, calls the military police, calls staff sergeants, calls everything. And yeah, they come and bust us. We get arrested by the MPs. We still deployed. Still deployed to Tikrit, Iraq. And we had to basically go to trial out there. And about 6 months into the deployment, 4, 5, 6 months in, that's when they ruled that, yep, we're kicking you out. You're going home, buddy. Got our rank stripped. We had to serve 45 days. Basically like community service, but it's not really community service. Basically, 2 pallets, about 50 yards away from each other, right? Or I should say 50 feet. 50 sandbags. on one pallet. We had to fill them up ourselves with sand. Obviously, we're in Iraq. We filled each bag up, placed them on the pallet, and for 4 hours a day, after our normal routine that we had to do with our own people, we had to report to the talk and grab a sandbag in each hand and walk it to the other pallet and fill it up and go back and forth for 4 hours. So not only did that mess me up physically, financially, but also mentally on various different levels. One, I was getting kicked out of the military and I felt alone, and it felt like nobody gave a fuck about me. Two, when I got back, I realized I wasn't the same person. I got back and tried jumping back into my old lifestyle, hanging out with my old friends, doing the same things. But I was messed up. And not only did I hate myself, hated my significant other because they left me alone as well. In my lowest point, when I specifically asked them not to, just bear with me and be there for me. No, they left me too while I was over there. So when I came back, I still had that hatred. And there were other little things here and there that that person did in front of me to not only make me feel more insecure about myself, but to feel more hatred, anger, animosity, betrayal. I felt everything from this person. So that was the beginning of a toxic relationship. Again, I was being abandoned by that person. And for another person, not like a relationship wise, but for other people, they would go hang out with those said people and I would be left alone. You see, this is where I have this big issue with, what's the word for it? Attachment issues. I have huge attachment issues. If you just abruptly leave me or leave me out of anything, it's done. I will never hate you more than for someone to abandon me. Abandonment issues is a better word for it. Attachment and abandonment. Don't abandon me. That is like the worst thing that I've ever felt in my entire life. And it's all with people that are close to me. So this led to me cutting out all my friendships, ignoring people, blocking people, and isolating myself. It's taken some time, taken a lot of time, but I've learned to just be happy by myself, be happy with myself, and be proud of myself. It hasn't been easy, that's for sure. But as of today, I am eons and years, light years ahead of the old me. Thankfully, I have my children to motivate me to continue and go on every day because I feel the genuine love from them. The genuine love that I've never felt from anybody and nobody's given me. They see me and their eyes light up they just love seeing me. They love me being around. They love everything about me. And they don't know S word about me. You know, if they would have known the old me, they probably wouldn't feel that way. But because they're my children and they know me and they see me, especially how I am today, just warms my heart. And I'm just so thankful that I actually have family now. My own blood runs through them. I just want them to be so much better than I've ever been. And they will be. The damn promise. The moral of the story. Well, there's really no moral. And it's not really a story. This is really my life. And that's how it goes, unfortunately. I didn't even get into the deeper, darker details of everything that's happened. But I just wanted to give you guys a slight perspective on how I came up, my backstory, my mental issues that I've had. I had to go through therapy for, I want to say, 2 years. 2 years back, I jumped from therapist to therapist, trying to learn. I was on medication prescribed by a doctor, therapy for 2 years, of which it really helped. It helped me open up, and actually, I want to speak about things like this, creating this video. And I don't know exactly how I'm gonna edit this down. Honestly, this is taking about an hour of filming, and I don't want it to be that long. So, for everybody listening or anyone that tuned in, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to me blabble and vent. I've been thinking about doing a video like this for a long time. I just never knew how to do it. But now I somewhat have the equipment and the time. So thank you, everyone. And if there's anyone watching this that maybe we've had a connection in the past, we were friends, and now we don't speak that much, I just want you to know it was not you that did anything. Most likely. It was me 100%. And I wasn't helping. It wasn't me. I was lost. And I did not know how to ask for help to find myself again. So I'm sorry. But just know that whatever connection we had in the past, I truly did cherish it. And I always will. And we may never get back to how things used to be, but just know I appreciate it. And I'll always have love for everybody out there watching this. So I'm gonna end it here. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, evening, week, month, year, so on and so forth. Again, thank you. See you guys.